Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Sophie Scott. Humans have a natural tendency to accumulate stuff, some more than others. For those people, collecting and hoarding gets to a point where it becomes a psychiatric condition, a danger and a health hazard. It's believed more than 1 million Australians may have the problem. This is how Judy Nicholas lived for almost 3 decades. An unhappy marriage saw her collecting more and more stuff until her house was overflowing.
To make yourself happy, I would say, let's go shopping. So we'd go shopping for clothes.
Eventually her friends and family stepped in, asking her to seek help for her hoarding.
Eventually, I came out of denial. Nearly 30 years of being in denial, thinking it wasn't really a problem.
She's not alone. Experts meeting in Sydney estimate as many as 1 million Australians could be suffering from compulsive hoarding.
The individual is shut off from the rest of the world because they see their identity in things.
Tim Kessel is still struggling with the hoarding disorder.
I put items away because they've got personal meaning for me. Also because it might be as simple as something I want to read a bit later and I don't have the time now.
Social workers say helping hoarders to declutter is a long-term and labour-intensive process. Experts stress that hoarding isn't simply having a messy or cluttered house. Hoarders often collect items of little or no value and get very upset if they have to throw something out. Many hoarders live in squalor for many years before seeking help, and more than half of the cases are in their 50s and 60s.
Sometimes hoarders who have gotten so much help from so many different places still just really struggle and have made improvements, then just go back.
Through therapy, Judy Nicholas has overcome her hoarding and can now live a normal, uncluttered life. Genetic research has raised a lot of questions, but one of the trickiest is who owns our genes. The federal court is being asked to decide that in a case involving 2 biotech companies and their patents on gene mutations linked to cancer. Cancer patients are worried that if companies control the technology to isolate the cancer genes, treatments will become too expensive. Carl Herr reports.
Brisbane woman Yvonne Darcy has a history of breast cancer and doesn't like the idea of a person's genes being controlled by anyone.
Somebody owning a part of me, or you, or anybody else, and I don't believe that it's right.
US company Myriad Genetics owns the patent to a mutated gene known as BRCA1. Australian-based Genetic Technologies holds the patent licence here. Lawyers who've launched the case say patents are meant to protect inventions, not scientific discoveries.
We say that this gene is something that exists naturally in the human body and therefore it's a discovery and shouldn't attract patent protection.
Counsel for Myriad Genetics told the federal court the patent is not for the gene itself, but something created artificially to test for the probability of breast and ovarian cancer. The cancer group, which is jointly fighting the patent, says the case has far-reaching implications.
The way research is going now in the development and diagnosis of cancer, it's all about isolating the gene that provides this cancer. So yes, this is a very, very important test case.
Myriad Genetics lost a similar case in the United States, but that decision was later overturned on appeal. Cancer Voices Australia says the company's argument in defence of the Australian patent raises a worrying precedent.
It's very important to make sure that the drugs and the testing are seen as one of the same, and I think any separation of this could have a major impact on cancer diagnosis and treatment in the future.
A number of experts will give evidence at the hearing, which is expected to last about a week.
Around 5,000 people a year develop cancer after being exposed to dangerous toxins at work. Experts say Australia lags well behind the rest of the world when it comes to reducing chemical exposure in the workplace. Whether it's farming or working on a building site, for some, doing your job can be a serious health hazard. Researchers estimate that as many as 5,000 people are diagnosed with cancer caused by carcinogens in their workplace.
That's a tragedy and that shouldn't be happening. There are ways of reducing exposure.
We need to drive those figures down. So ultimately the difference is fewer people getting cancer, and surely that's a goal that everybody would support.
A new report says Australia is well behind other countries when it comes to monitoring toxic chemicals in the workplace. Experts say if Australia followed regulations introduced in the United States and Europe, workers here would be safer.
Some of the systems that have been used have reduced exposure by 50% in just a few years.
Researchers want to collect information about who is being exposed to cancer-causing agents, what industries they're in, and the level of exposure. And they say there are benefits for industries which clean up their act.
There are advantages not only in that they're having a healthier workforce, but also in that they can save money.
Experts say GPs need to ask their patients whether they've been exposed to chemicals in the workplace when they take a medical history. Researchers also say workers and medical staff are not always aware of the potential for compensation and the process for claiming it. The number of people with high blood pressure is at record levels, putting many at risk of heart attack or stroke. New research involving 500,000 people has found that more than a third recorded a high blood pressure reading. Young men are most at risk, while for many, just taking medication has made no difference and offers no protection. Rebecca Barrett reports.
Louise Hay knew something wasn't right on her way to work 10 years ago.
I just felt a bit odd, and so I asked one of the girls, I work in a hospital, to take my blood pressure, and it was 160 on 100, so I got quite a shock.
An ideal reading is 120/70, but a new study has found record numbers of Australians have high blood pressure or hypertension. Researchers examined the clinical records of 500,000 people around the country who had blood pressure checks between 2005 and 2010.
It's surprising to us that we still have 1 in 3 Australians presenting to their GP with high blood pressure. These are historically high levels that are being maintained.
And it's men who are most at risk, putting them in more danger of a heart attack or stroke. 23 to 34-year-olds are 3 times more likely than women to have high blood pressure. Tasmanians recorded the highest levels, researchers say due to a cooler climate, while the Northern Territory with its warm temperatures had the lowest levels. The study also found that just taking medication is not enough. Almost half of those receiving treatment still had hypertension.
Just losing weight, exercising, eating healthily, those are the things that will most likely lower your blood pressure.
That's exactly what Louise Hay did late last year.
I have lost about 7 or 8 kilos, and with that loss they're even talking about maybe possibly reducing some of my medication.
It's hoped the study will kickstart new policies and programs to curb high blood pressure.
Increasing the awareness that it is a continuing problem and that we really have to treat our patients probably more aggressively.
That could mean more regular checks, preventative action that could save lives.
New research suggests that smoking while pregnant can reduce not only your daughter's fertility, but also your granddaughter's. Scientists from the University of Newcastle exposed mice to the toxins in cigarette smoke. They found the damage from tobacco could be passed down through the generations. The dangers of smoking while pregnant are well documented. What hasn't been clear is whether the damage from smoking could be passed on from one generation to another. Now, new research by the University of Newcastle suggests it can.
It tells us that the effect of smoking is not confined to the person who smoked, but through the germline can be transferred to future generations.
Using mice, they found that females who were exposed to cigarette smoke as a fetus or baby had fewer eggs, and those they did have were of inferior quality.
In our experiments, when we looked at the ovaries of these mice, we discovered that about a third of the eggs had completely disappeared, that they'd been killed off by the exposure to the toxin.
The findings prompted researchers to look at what effect smoking might have on a female baby's later fertility.
It's very significant because it completely changes the way that we look at cigarette smoking.
Despite public health campaigns, it's estimated that 1 in 5 pregnant Australian women still smoke, and fertility rates in this country remain low. The main reason is that women are waiting until they're older to have children.
In doing that, they're actually having babies in their 30s, and that's at the time when your pool of eggs is very severely depleted.
And men are not immune. Research published in 2010 found that cigarette smoking during pregnancy could affect the fertility of male fetuses later in life. Could a simple aspirin be the key to stopping cancer? Researchers say they've made an important breakthrough in determining how cancer spreads through the body, and using anti-inflammatory drugs might be the way to stop it. The humble aspirin has a myriad of uses as a pain reliever and a blood thinner, and now researchers say it could also help stop cancer from spreading.
We know the safety profiles of it, we know what the maybe some of the other effects of those drugs are. So they're well understood, they're well tolerated by people.
Doctors have known drugs like aspirin can inhibit tumours from growing, but they weren't sure why. Now scientists from the Peter MacCallum Cancer Centre have some answers. They've found that tumours release compounds which encourage lymphatic vessels to widen and spread cancer.
We're trying to identify molecules within these vessels that assist the spread of cancer cells to other organs in the body.
Anti-inflammatory drugs such as aspirin shut that process down.
Chemotherapeutic drugs stop tumours growing. Aspirins could be used in conjunction with these drugs to stop tumours from spreading.
If one of those control points is a place where aspirin and similar drugs work, then potentially we could apply those drugs to reduce metastatic disease.
The hope is that this research will lead to new cancer treatments or even a test which could predict which tumours will spread. They say the findings will be most useful for lung, breast and prostate cancer. It was a military operation requiring precision and skill. Injured on duty, Navy attack dog Rocco was in pain and needing urgent attention. Rocco had a trip to the dentist after biting off more than he could chew. Christy O'Brien reports.
He's a critical element in Australia's defence kit. He fights crime, responds to emergencies around the globe and protects world leaders.
So, of course, the President Obama, so that was a big deal. I got deployed as an operation for CHOGM as well, which was the Queen as well.
But lately, Rocco's been unable to really sink his teeth into the job after attacking his metal food bowl one too many times.
And gets a little bit sooky at times and a little bit angry.
A chipped tooth and raging infection meant there was no choice but a trip to the dentist for root canal surgery to keep the killer bite in working order. For this dental officer, it was his first patient on 4 legs.
No, I haven't worked on a dog before, but I've got a couple of mates who are vets who've been giving me a few tips.
He admits to being a little nervous about fiddling with Rocco's lethal fangs.
A little bit, yeah. As long as Rocco's asleep, everything should work out fine.
An hour later, and the surgery has been deemed a success. And under the dentist's orders, Rocco has been told to stay off the hard stuff, but he should be back on the job within a few days.
And that's all for this edition of the Health Quarter. Thanks for joining us. If you've got any story ideas or feedback, please get in touch on Facebook. Search for the Health Quarter page and click like if you want to be kept up to date. And I'll see you next time.